Hey guys, welcome to my channel, the Esoteric Night of Malta. Hope you're all very well. Hope you had a good weekend, although it was a really weird sort of vibe yesterday. Don't know if anybody else noticed it. 4th of October. The hunted become the hunt. The hunters become the hunted. Hopefully that took place. We'll see. But definitely some sort of weird, calm vibe yesterday, a little bit today. So today we are going to go through. I watched something over the weekend, The Cosmic Secret with Corey Good and David Wilcock, and it really resonated with me, the documentary. So we're going to go over the Ancient Builder Race. It wasn't from that section actually. Ancient Builder Race, Ruins Technology, the Moon, how it was artificially placed into Earth's orbit 500,000 years ago. I'm just going to check this is recording, guys, because last time it didn't, and I did an episode of 45 minutes and it didn't record, so hey ho. And what we're going to do, we're going to start with Ancient Builder Race and the Moon. We might cover a couple of other subjects briefly, the Dark Fleet potentially. Also we'll touch on the Blue Avians, but only a little bit. They're up here. Sorry, they're here, sorry. So let's go. And we're going to watch some of The Cosmic Secret. And I'm going to talk now and again through it, give you my thoughts and explain what they're talking about, okay? So sit back and enjoy.
So one of the few things that we do know about this ancient builder race is that they had created this giant defensive grid around this local stellar neighborhood that we're a part of. 52 local stars clustered together. And they had created these giant Death Star types of ships that were the size of moons and planets that set up a grid around the entire local star cluster that prevented any types of intruders from coming in. And this grid was in place and kept our local stellar neighborhood safe from intruders for billions of years.
It does appear, based on some very kind of understated things they say in Log 1, that they had quite a vast civilization, that they spread out to many neighboring stars. This is the ancient builder race. They colonized all the neighboring stars in our solar system. Then you have to ask yourself, what in the world could have survived for 2 billion years? Well, it's very fascinating because throughout our solar system, we have what has been referred to by various insiders I've spoken to as a cosmic junkyard. What is the junkyard? It is a collection of crystalline ruins. These ruins are made of a glass-like material, and the material is not glass. It is actually a transparent aluminum. And there have already been alloys of transparent aluminum made by various companies now. And when they stress test these alloys, they find out it's 5 times stronger than bulletproof glass. As our secret space program has apparently gone beyond our solar system with reverse engineered technology similar to what they got in the Roswell crash, which is over 70 years ago now.
Right, guys, I was going to stop there when he says the secret space program has gone beyond our solar system. So secret space program, solar warden, US Navy, really. These secret space program is under a black project. Think DUMBs, deep underground military bases all over the world. And so I guess you say they're benevolent, although they're esoteric from public view. And when you look at, we're going to touch on the Dark Fleet. So the Dark Fleet essentially are, well, they were the SS and the Draco, the Germans, and they made a horrible pact with the Draco late 1930s. I think I touched on it in my Antarctica episode with Admiral Ebert. So So the Dark Fleet are pretty much hated throughout the galaxy, same as the Reptilians, the Draco. They apparently have taken over 38 planets, I think, the Dark Fleet. I imagine they work alongside the Draco. I know they supplied the Draco with a base in Antarctica, Operation High Jump. Going back then, I'm not going to get into it again. It's in the Antarctica episode. And I've heard they used to go around the galaxies, the Dark Fleet, and threaten planets with nuclear bombs. I don't know if I should say that word unless I shouldn't have said that word, but anyway. Ordnance. So, yeah. So the Dark Fleet operate from the moon, they also operate from Antarctica, they also operate from Mars, which we're going to touch on a little bit, and we will carry on.
They found that all of the approximately 54 different stars in our own local group of stars, they're all gravitationally connected. Every one of those stars has planets and moons and satellites with these same crystalline ruins on them. Obelisks, pyramids, domes.
Fly by the comets, visit asteroids, visit the moon of Mars. There's a monolith there, a very unusual structure on this object that goes around Mars once in 7 hours. When people find out about that, they're going to say, who put that there?
Those obelisks, pyramids, and domes only constitute what is visible on the surface. The ancient builder race spent a lot more energy building inside these moons and planets than they did on the surface. We're talking about vast regions that are habitable, where all you really need to do is seal off the door and reintroduce air. And you've now pressurized an environment that can be reoccupied.
What I believe is that in 1976, when Viking did this incredible reconnaissance in the bicentennial summer, they photographed something that was a mystery, was at the centerpiece of the NASA raison d'etre for going to Mars, the search for life, and they then never followed up. It's a set of pictures, 2 separate sets of frames at 2 different sun angles that show a collection of pyramids, an astounding geometric regularity in this layout. We don't have to prove they're artifacts. All we have to do is provide probable cause to suspect they could be, and then the ethics of science say you got to go and test.
When you go back to the original NASA imagery of the Martian surface from 1976, there are 2 frames that really matter. There's 35A76 and there's 70A13. And when you compare what's on these 2 frames, you clearly see you have a city of what obviously look like pyramids, which apparently, again, were emulations of the ancient builder race crystal pyramids that they had found throughout our solar system and beyond. There is a gigantic pyramid estimated to be 1.5 miles wide. And this pyramid is clearly pentagonal, 5-sided. But what is even more fascinating than that, there are 2 of the 5 corners at the top that are narrower than the others. And when you actually look at the pyramid, it is the 5-star human pattern of the human body. You can superimpose the Vitruvian Man on top of what's called the D&M pyramid on Mars, and it precisely fits. What does that mean? That means the 5-sided pyramid on Mars is anthropomorphic. It is a human image. It is a pyramid built in a human image. So believe it or not, pyramids and obelisks have been found on the moon, on Mars, and on...
Okay, guys, so I am totally on board with that theory, and I'm going to back it up with what I saw here. So I got this from a group, from one of my sources, deep into the web, but this backs up. Look, okay, I'm going to play this video, 2 videos, and just watch, because this really, again, backs up with evidence for me. Very interesting video.
envelope, neither did Bob Monroe. He gave a sealed envelope to Bob Monroe with.
Sorry, this is a former remote viewer for the, I think, the US Army or CIA. And obviously this is after he's retired, and he's disclosing information about what he saw on Mars.
Inside had a card that said Mars 1 million years BC. Bob thought it was another moon day target as well. And he had a list of coordinates. So Bob had this card in his shirt pocket, and we had a list of coordinates as targets. And the first set of coordinates was 44.89 degrees, 9.55 degrees west. I didn't know anything about the targets as I was laying in a dark black cube in the lab, floating on a sea of salt, listening to hemisync tapes. And the first thing I heard was the coordinates. And this was my response. I got a great view of a pyramid form, sitting in a large depression. It's yellowish, ochre colored. I get clouds, a severe storm, major geological trauma. Then I was asked to visit the site before the trauma. They said, go back before the trauma. They said all the dirt had disappeared. There were now smooth walls. Everything was flat, megalithic. I said something about, gee, is this a new pyramid? Did they discover a new pyramid? Because it's really large. Shadow of people, fragments, memory of people. They said, go back to when they were there. Large people, thin and tall, wearing strange clothes, skin tight, very tight, almost can't see them.
Pre-Adamites.
This is the actual target based on the coordinates. That's the face everybody's always referring to on Mars. This is actually the depressed area. This is the pyramid. It's actually a double-layered pyramid. This is the second set of coordinates that I got.
Right, so to the second video, and this is where it gets good. But again, there's just so much evidence that I have seen that, you know, too many coincidences, really.
This is the second set of coordinates that I got. In a canyon looking up steep high walls that go on forever. Very intricate, huge sections of smooth stone carved out. Getting very large structures. Rabbit warren of huge corridors and rooms. They said the rooms were really large, and again I said something to them about this has got to be some new pyramids or something, because I don't remember ever seeing rooms this size in Giza or anywhere like that. That's a canyon, and that's the pyramid. Now what's really interesting about this particular pyramid.
So just to see, so you can clearly see the pyramid has been built on the crater, and yeah, I'm going to let him tell you what the dimensions are.
You notice it's sitting on the side of the impact crater. And that's a real trick, because that means the pyramid had to be put there after the impact crater. Because if the impact crater hit after the pyramid was there, it would have destroyed the pyramid. You can't have one and not the other. You understand what I'm saying? If that crater appeared after the pyramid, it would have destroyed that pyramid. The other interesting thing about this picture is you can measure the shadow of the crater, and based on the angle of the sun, you can estimate the size of the crater wall as being 3,000 meters tall. So that's a pretty deep crater. Now look at the shadow on the pyramid. Pretty tall pyramid. That's a 20,000 meter tall pyramid.
20 kilometers.
Pretty big, huh? That's not the only thing interesting. That pyramid had to have been formed after the crater was formed. Here's something else interesting. That pyramid's even closer to the edge. And here's an even more interesting fact. There's the road in, there's the road out.
Road here as well. So you see what I'm talking about, guys. The amount of stuff that the government hide from us is absolutely ridiculous. It's hidden in plain sight, as they say. And we're going to go straight back into Cosmic Secret because it's so
Other
good.
moons and satellites throughout our solar.
It's going to start talking about Tiamat. And Tiamat, I heard this from one of my other friends. She told me about Tiamat and Maldek, and this discovery fascinates me because it backs up the theory about the hollow artificial moon, and yeah, it rewrites our ancient history and science. So enjoy.
System that are very damaged and very, very old, over 2 billion years old. This civilization that was on Mars was very aware of the ancient builder race, and that these ruins, as their civilization evolved, they discovered these ruins were very extensive. They're always made out of crystal, and there's all these different places you can go where you can go inside a moon and find an enormous city's worth of space.
I'm Dr. Michael Sala. I'm the author of the Secret Space Program book series. I'm investigating ways to introduce information concerning classified technologies that have been suppressed from the general public for decades and are now going to be released, we think, in the very short future. Some of you might be asking, well, how could giant bases be built on the moon? Well, we know, according to a group of Japanese scientists that released a paper in 2017, that giant caverns have been discovered in the moon, and that one of these caverns is big enough to house the entire metropolitan region of Philadelphia within it.
The people that were involved in this ancient builder race seem to have mysteriously disappeared, and the cultures that came after them worshipped them as gods. They would emulate their architecture, and that the people that were on Mars, we call the progenitor race, they actually built their own structures that were very similar to what they found all throughout our solar system.
We had Tiamat, which they say is basically a supermassive Earth. And we had Maldek, which was Mars, much smaller than Earth, but it was behaving as a moon around Tiamat. Two different civilizations had developed, and they were very similar. The beings on Tiamat, they all had these elongated skulls that we've seen in various studies, but they were slightly different. The beings on Tiamat were slightly taller and had different shaped skulls. The beings on Maldek were slightly skinnier and smaller, and again had slightly different skulls, but they were genetically related. They were considered basically cousins, and they had royal families from both sides that were in competition with each other and warred with one another. So at some point, this group that we call the pre-Adamites, they entered into warfare with another civilization that is in our local 52 star cluster. And they developed this plan to harness the ancient builder race grid and to use it as a weapon against their enemies. And this grid, it works through what we call a cosmic web. Every star, every planet is connected with an electromagnetic filament. And that's how portal travel works. You travel through these electromagnetic filaments.
Wormholes.
And it's been used by some top scientists. So it is an idea which actually had currency in the last century, in the 19th century. And for those who care to go back into history and look at the major scientific journals of that period, you'll notice that articles on the electrical nature of comets and the possible electrical activity on the sun were topics of discussion. Unfortunately, in the early part of the 20th century, all of that was more or less suppressed. Something that, of course, we're brought up to believe, and that is that gravity is the controlling influence in the universe. It's what causes the planets to orbit around the sun, the moon around the earth, and to cause the tides upon the earth. All of that is true up to a point, but the thing to remember is that basically there is no understanding of gravity. Einstein's theory doesn't explain gravity. It has matter somehow affecting space in a way which is completely unphysical, in other words, warping empty space. There's no explanation as to how this might happen or what it even means. So we have more equations, but without any real meaning. What I'm suggesting is that we don't have an explanation for gravity, and until we do, we will not understand the limitations of that theory.
In 2017, on my website, I released 2 DIA reference documents that had never been released before. These documents were given to me by Washington, D.C. Beltway insiders, and they wanted me to release them on a certain date.
My name is Jordan Sather. I'm an internet influencer, speaker, and journalist. So the interesting thing about these particular DIA documents, these documents that were written for the ATIP program that the DoD conducted between 2007 and 2012, these DIA documents, we've never actually been able to read them in the public domain. What's really interesting is that at the end of 2017, Corey Goode had actually released 2 of these 38 DIA scientific papers to the public in full. And this has actually shocked many of the people who even wrote these scientific papers. Dr. Eric Davis, he confirmed that Corey Goode was the first person to leak some of these papers out into the public.
Corey Goode is unique because he's the first person.
This guy, I must say, Dr. Michael Salla, he is almost on a level with Tesla, not on a level, but his knowledge about and revelations, and Corey Goode, really. So I know about David Wilcock as well. I don't trust everything he says, but he does talk some sense sometimes. But Dr. Michael Salla is one of the most, definitely the most experienced in this field. And they're talking about advanced tech, all sorts of stuff they have.
Person that I know of that is both a contactee, someone who has had extensive contacts with extraterrestrial civilizations, while also being an insider of actually having worked in some of these compartmentalized programs. And what's even more significant about him is that he is trusted sufficiently by insiders to be given some of these documents, some of these defense intelligence reference documents, to basically release to the general public to get people up to speed with the possibility of these kinds of advanced technologies existing.
These DIA documents support the idea that wormhole travel is actually possible through the cosmic web. Using this same web is how the ancient builder race built this galactic protection grid around our local star cluster.
In this case, the pre-Adamites were trying to weaponize this natural system. And what they tried to do is use this feedback from this grid.
So what he's talking about now, the pre-Adamites tried to harm the other race, I think the Andalavians or the Anunnaki, I'm not sure. But essentially, what they're talking about now is how and why our moon, which we don't actually see, because the one we see is a luminary, although there has been moving lately in the last couple of days. My friend Neil sent me an image and it was slightly different position to the normal image. So again, weird stuff's happening, guys, but this is essentially, listen to this, is how we have the moon.
To cause the star of their enemies to go supernova and to then destroy the civilization. But they didn't time it right, the way that energy passes through this cosmic web, and they chose the exact wrong moment, and it caused our sun to superflare. And when it did, it destroyed Tiamat and ripped the atmosphere away from Mars, and it then also affected the atmosphere of Earth, and all of the other planets, their trajectories changed in this event.
The most important researcher supporting the exploded planet hypothesis is Dr. Thomas Van Flandern, and he was the head of the US Naval Observatory in Washington, D.C. And he came up with this theory that between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter, the present asteroid belt, there was once a super-Earth, a very large planet that was in that orbital region. And he came up with a paper that actually explained how this planet existed at some point and how the asteroid belt is evidence of this planet's destruction through events that we could only speculate about. And Dr. Thomas Van Flandern supported this exploded planet hypothesis by studying the geology of Mars. And what he found was that half of Mars was basically 20 miles thicker than the other half. And that was evidence of it facing this exploding planet and receiving all the debris. And that this was also an explanation for why the atmosphere of Mars was suddenly evaporated hundreds of thousands of years ago.
And I heard about it in secret programs that did much more research than Tom Van Flandern, where they called it codename Brilliant Pebbles. And one of the fascinating things when I first met Corey Good was that he knew what the codename Brilliant Pebbles meant without me having to tell him. And I had already written it up, and I already had recordings of people telling me. That was one of many fascinating connections.
So in the 1980s, scientists wanted to know what used to be where the asteroid belt is. They knew about Tiamat, but they didn't think there was enough debris there to actually corroborate that there was a planet there at one time. They developed this algorithm that traced back over time where these pieces would have been joined and would have been one piece, and where mathematically all of the other planets would have been. And they were able to extrapolate that yes, there was a planet that was in that location, but most of it had been blown further out of the orbit. Interestingly enough, though, there was a project, Brilliant Pebbles, in 1987 by the beginnings of the secret space program, SDI, enacted by President Reagan, that had to do more with a missile shield. And often they would reuse, within a certain set of programs, they will reuse a program name so that they have plausible deniability of higher, more secretive programs. They would layer them within the same name. And that way, if someone would mention Brilliant Pebbles, one of the scientists would be able to say, oh, no, that just had to do with a missile shield. It had nothing to do with anything extraterrestrial.
Has the transcript of a remote viewing session where the remote viewer was asked to look at what happened to Mars just before a cataclysm that occurred up to 1 million years ago. And Joseph McMoneagle was the remote viewer who looked at Mars at the time of it undergoing some kind of planetary catastrophe, probably associated with the exploding superplanet. What he saw was that these surviving Martians getting on these spacecraft, on these planetary arcs, and evacuating to another planet which had a very equatorial region with volcanoes and so forth. This is where the Martians evacuated to.
So after the great destruction of Tiamat and Maldak was damaged beyond repairing itself, these pre-Adamites took the moon as a giant ship, a giant conveyance. It was also in the vicinity of Tiamat. They hijacked the moon and flew it to the Earth. And they tidal locked it with the Earth to keep it in place. And they lived on the moon for thousands of years, observing the culture, the development of civilization going on in the planet below. And
okay, guys, so that picture there, okay, I'm actually going to show you a couple more pictures. But you imagine, okay, the moon's obviously a lot smaller than the Earth. Even the one we see is not the real one. But that's another conversation. So this is a torus field where it goes in on itself. Type of physics that's never talked about, but you know, my point is this moon is hollow. Even when I think it was Apollo 11 landed on the moon, it reverberated for over an hour. So it tells you something. But my point is the amount of space, literally, like, look, you know what's above ground, it's all big, you know, you got the sky, loads of space. But when you imagine it being hollow, then, I mean, this space isn't doubled, it's not even tripled or quadrupled, it is on a massive scale, magnetized. So I've heard that several ET races are up there. They've all got leases on part of the land for mining and stuff, whatever mining's to be done up there in case it is hollow. But there must be something up there. But that could be disinformation again. So we'll finish off with the ending of it.
And at the same time having certain colonies down where they knew where ancient builder race remnants were.
Survivors of the catastrophe that were in Earth's moon then suffered another massive cataclysm 55,000 years ago, which we now know was a solar flash, a massive emission of light, energy, and matter from the sun. Part of the problem when you have these solar flashes is that in addition to an enormous heating of the atmospheres and even the surface of planets that could be up to 1,000 degrees Celsius, we're literally talking about something that melts stone. You also have the sun throwing off a whole lot of debris, a whole lot of chunky, molten material that will physically strike the surface of planets and moons. Solar flash is what now is being called a micronova. A supernova is where a star completely explodes and nothing is left except for a red dwarf or brown dwarf, whereas the micronova causes an incredible flash to occur, but the star maintains its stability and its structure in the aftermath. And the latest NASA research that's only come out in the last year proves that there are multiple documented examples of micronovas everywhere we look. This is not uncommon. Stars do this naturally, and it is a very normal aspect of a given solar system.
So after these...
So I'm going to stop it there, guys. We're actually going to do the next episode on solar flash and ascension and what my opinion is happening to the world, planet Earth at the moment. I'm just going to show you a little bit of... Also, actually, let's chuck this in there. So we know also what's happening with... Sorry, guys. We know what's happening with the Donald at the moment, and he's supposed to be in Walter Reed Medical Hospital. I personally think he is not. And Rig for Red, a lot of government buildings all over the world, Norway, America, UK, are all lit up in red. And this means something. We think it's the hunters become the hunted. Tick tock, tick tock. We've heard that Gitmo is expecting high-level American prisoners also. So there's definitely something going on. Just can't put my finger on what, but we're not supposed to know either, are we? So guys, thank you very much. Again, share and subscribe as much as you can. We are getting more followers, which is good. I did try to do the webcam again, but I'm going to order a really expensive one because the one I've got it working eventually, but there's a lag from me syncing when I'm talking. My mouth's not syncing the words right, so I'm not going to put that out. But Gonna finish on this actually. Yeah, but there's a lot of crazy things happening in the world right now. The next episode's going to be good as well. Give it a like as well, guys, because it will pop up in the results a bit more. And we are going to finish with this this character getting excited in the gym. But you got to love it, because everybody needs positivity, and this guy is just loving his little gym session. Ciao for now, guys. Have a good day, and see you next time on the Esoteric Night of Malta. Over and out.
Engkau yang cantik, engkau yang manis,